Hi, folks. This is going to be, we're talking about family, so this is going to be chapter 16b, okay, 16b. We've been talking about social structure, and we defined the nuclear family and the functions of the nuclear family, and then we talked about composite family forms. So now we're still talking about structure of the family, but what we're going to begin talking about is the incest taboo, okay? So again, I forgot to do this. There we go. Incest taboo. Okay, the incest taboo refers to sexual relations between blood kin, okay? And it is taboo, it is forbidden. In all cultures, it's called cultural universal. All cultures prohibit sexual relations between blood kin. Now, just as I say that, I will immediately say there are exceptions, okay? And some of the exceptions, notable exceptions among Hawaiian royalty. Members of the royal family, okay, brother and sister are expected to marry. And the reason for this is you have this concept of a field of eligibles, and it's all those people that you can possibly marry, okay? Well, if you are at the top of society, your field of eligibles is really contracted, and for Hawaiian royalty, it's limited to your sister. Among the royalty of Europe, the field of eligibles is real contracted, and so what you saw is a lot of times first cousins would marry, because the only people you can marry are members of royal families, and so you end up marrying first cousins. And so when World War I breaks out, the Kaiser is making war on his first cousin, King George of England. It's a weird kind of thing, and so like in the United States, I don't think there's any. I don't know, I hate to say that because I'm always proven wrong, but I don't think there's any state where you can marry your first cousin, okay? But it's permitted among some folks, okay, members of the upper crust. Okay, so we have this incest taboo, and there's several reasons for it. Let me just mention. One is the harmful effects of inbreeding. We have dominant and recessive genes, okay? And recessive genes tend to house exceptional characteristics, and so if you mate with somebody in your same gene pool, the recessive genes are more likely to match up and become dominant. And so things like mental retardation, physical handicaps, and stuff like that are more common among kin. Now, you're also more likely to get brighter people and stuff like that. When they breed animals, they use the same process, okay, so that these recessive genes match up and become dominant. But for humans, and in terms of natural selection, it makes sense that over time, those societies that didn't have the incest taboo would die out because of the associated health deficiencies, health problems. So another explanation or theory of the incest taboo is just that the role confusion. Okay, it's just like if fathers and daughters can procreate, what's the offspring relationship to the girl, to the mother's mother? It just gets all messed up. It's just a problem. And so to keep things straightforward, they argue the incest taboo. So for whatever reason, we have the incest taboo, okay? The effect of the incest taboo is it makes the nuclear family discontinuous over time. The nuclear family, what that means is that the nuclear family dissolves over time, okay? So you're born into a family, all right? And then you go find a mate and you leave the nuclear family. Your parents died, the nuclear family's gone, okay? So it's a very temporary vessel as compared with a consanguineal family where the family lasts forever. People are born into it and you show allegiance to the family, and then other members are born into it and you stay in the family. But not so with the nuclear family, unless the nuclear family is a part of an extended family. So I want you to think for just a minute, okay? This is a weird thought exam, but if you could marry your sister, think of the advantages of marrying a sibling, okay? You wouldn't have to move out of the house because You grew up in the house. You're marrying your sister. Why leave, right? You just stay there with your folks. You wouldn't have to worry about inheritance because you're going to inherit straight line. You don't have to, there's not going to be somebody coming into the family. You don't have to worry about that. Lineage, you don't have to worry about that. It's just a straight line descent. You're going to like your wife's cooking because your mom taught her how to cook, and everybody likes their mother's cooking, right? So, yeah, so there's some advantages. But the thing of it is we have the ancestry. So the nuclear family is discontinuous over time. As a consequence, we have had to develop some rules, okay? And they are these. Rules of residence. Rules of residence. My granddaughter, that's Katy Perry, I think in the background. I hope you can't hear that. Rules of residence, lineage, and inheritance. Boy. Rules of residence, lineage, and inheritance. Okay, so let's talk about rules of residence. Rules of residence upon marriage, where do you live? Okay, and there's several of them. I'm just going to write them down here and then we'll talk about it. Okay, you can be patrilocal. Oops. Patrilocal, matrilocal, matripatra. Whoops, that's not right. P-A-T. Oh, right. I can't. Yeah. Brother. Here, let me do it again. Matri and matripatrilocal, avunculocal, A-B-U-N-C-U-L-O-C-A-L, and neolocal. Okay, so we've got patrilocal, matrilocal, matripatrilocal, avunculocal, neolocal. All right. Patrilocal is when, upon marriage, they live with the husband's family. Okay, so they go. That's like what I showed you earlier. You go live with the husband's family. Matrilocal, you live with the wife's family. Matripatrilocal. Again, I love this because it illustrates how functional family life can be. Think about this. I thought my granddaughter was sneaking up on me again. I'll be a nervous wreck all morning. Matripatrilocal is that, think about this, you marriage is contracted at an early age. You got this young girl. Mia, would you cut that out? Hey, and turn down Katy Perry, would you? Turn down the music, please. No, it must be louder. You can see who rules them. Who wears the pants in my family. It ain't me. Okay. Let's see. Patrilocal. You reside with the husbands. I was telling you to make the patrilocal. Okay. So the thing of it is if you a young bride goes into the house, into her husband's family, she's under tremendous pressure because the mother-in-law is the head of that household, and she's got to meet her expectations. And so it's a scary kind of thing. The leading cause of death among Chinese brides in traditional China was suicide, because they're put into their husband's family, they're under the thumb of the mother-in-law, and it was very difficult for them. So some societies developed this custom where you initially live with the wife's family, okay? And so the girl's with her mama, okay? So you got this 16-year-old bride. Now she's with her mama. Her mama's teaching her how to cook and clean, okay? And then, upon the occasion of a special event, they move in with the husband's family. Well, that special event, you probably guessed, is the birth of the child, first child. That gives the girl, now she's older, she's more self-assured, she's got some skills down, and she owns the baby, okay? She controls the baby. And so that gives her a tremendous amount of power in her husband's family. So it just shows how well that helps him adapt and how functional it is. Okay, avuncular local is when upon marriage they reside with the wife's uncle. The wife's uncle, avuncular local, okay, uncle. I'm going to tell you about that a little bit later. It'll make some more sense. And then we have neolocal. Neo means new residence. And that's what we do in our culture. You know, if I'm getting married, most of you are thinking right off, we're going to have our own house. We're not going to live with his folks. We're going to live with my folks. We're going to be independent. And I encourage you to do that, but I will point out some disadvantages. Let me just tell them to you real briefly. If you have a new residence, here's what you're going to face. First of all, you're going to have a house payment or a rent payment. Okay, that's going to be probably 30–40% of your income, and then you're going to, you're going to be independent. And when the child comes, you're going to have to worry about babysitters. If you move off, if you're far away, this is what happened to me. I was living 800 miles from home, and a big concern you got is who's going to take care of that child. Well, if you live in an extended family, or if you live with one parent or the other, the best babysitter in the world is grandma, okay? And she's right there and she's handy, and it's an advantage. Folks, I will tell you, I know you want to have your own household, and I'm sure you all will, despite whatever I might say. But I will tell you, nuclear families are hard on children, okay? Extended families, think about this. If you have a nuclear family, you are one divorce or one death away from that family blowing up, okay? And it's terrible for the kids. But if you live in an extended family, okay, and daddy dies, there's Uncle Harry that the kid has grown up with. He loves Uncle Harry, and Uncle Harry's his role model now, his grandpa, okay? So extended families are great for kids, okay? They're great for kids. I know you won't consider it, but just think of the advantages of it. Okay, so that's rules of residence. Now let's talk about lineage. Lineage is who do you recognize as kin? Lineage, who do you recognize as kin? And the rules of lineage are these. It's patrilineal, matrilineal, and bilateral. Okay, patrilineal, matrilineal, bilateral. And the thing is how do you trace descent? Now this is going to strike you as weird. Let's see, we're going into the fall semester, so I don't know when you're going to be seeing this, but fall semester, Thanksgiving comes around, and your mom says, okay, we're going to go to Granny's for Thanksgiving. And your first question is, which Granny? Because you recognize your father's grandparents and your mother's grandparents. If you were patrilineal, you would only recognize your father's parents. You would not recognize your mother's parents as your kin. You would know that they're her parents, but you would not recognize them. They're not your grandparents, okay? Sounds foreign to us, but that's just the way they did. Same is true for matrilineal, okay? You recognize your mother's family as your kinship unit, not your father's parents, right? Bilateral is what we are, okay? So we recognize both kin. Now, while we think that bilateral is the only way to go, we have a vestige of the patrilineal system. And the example of that is that upon marriage, traditionally, the wife takes the husband's name, okay? And that goes back to this patrilineal tradition. A lot of our, and I haven't mentioned this before, but a lot of our family customs and traditions come from the Old Testament, and it reflects Hebrew values. And so they were patrilineal. And so the wife takes the husband's name. Now, I know a lot of women today are, they're not caught up with these traditions, and they are independent women, and they've been influenced by feminism, and they want their own identity. And so a lot of women will keep their maiden name, okay, or sometimes they'll do hyphenated names, and that's okay. I encourage you girls to do that. But let me just point out one little problem. When you fight custom, when you fight tradition, you're swimming upstream. My sister wanted to do that. She had her own business. She wanted to keep her maiden name, and all was well. They had a son. The son grows up. The son is like 7 years old, okay? And one day he says to my sister, Mama, my name and Daddy's last name are the same. are you really my mama? And from that day on, she changed her name. and it just, I mean, you can do it if you want, but I'm telling you, you're fighting tradition. It's hard to fight. Okay. Now, inheritance, rules of inheritance are the same as rules of lineage, and this should make sense. So it's patrilineal, matrilineal, and bilateral, because you want the people to inherit your loot that you recognize as kin, right? I mean, you're not going to say, well, you're my kin, but I'm giving all my money over here. I mean, that makes no sense. So it's the same rules, okay? Patrilineal, matrilineal, and bilateral. Here's what this means. If your daddy's folks are poor as church mice and your mama's folks are rich and you live in a patrilineal system, you're out of luck. On the other hand, if you live in a matrilineal system, you're in like Flynn, okay? And, and we think of this as weird, but it's a common sort of thing. Now, but we have a bilateral system, so you inherit through both sides, okay? And that's what we would expect to be normal, but it's a function of our culture. Now, when in talking about a patrilineal system, I want to mention the two subtypes. Okay, there is primogenitor and ultimogenitor. Primogenitor is when the eldest son inherits everything, okay, and the younger sons don't get anything, and the daughters, of course, don't get anything because they're expected to go marry somebody else and have his property. And it seems patently unfair, but here's the reason. This system emerged when we were primarily agricultural. And if you have a farm, say 160 acres, and this farm will support a family, okay, which is what a lot of, like my grandparents, they farmed, they had like 320 acres. I think they farmed about 320 acres, or maybe a little bit more than that. The thing of it is that feeds a family. But if you have 4 or 5 sons and you've got 160 acres and then you split it up among 4 sons, now it's 40 acres apiece. You can't raise a family on 40 acres. So to keep the farm intact, we had this system called primogeniture, okay? Ultimogeniture is when the youngest son inherits everything. Again, the intent is to keep the land intact. That's the basic idea behind it. I'll mention a couple other things here, at least one other thing. Native tribes, particularly some of those that we find in Oklahoma, were matrilineal, okay? In the rare instance of a divorce, okay, the wife would get the lodge, she'd get the Chpt, okay? And it was in her name. Now, this is interesting for Oklahoma, because property was held in the wife's name. If in Indian Territory, if a white settler wanted to own land, he had to buy it. In order to buy it, he had to be married to a native woman, and that freed him up to buy the land. So a lot of you have some Indian blood, some white blood, okay? A lot of that was promoted by the fact, and I'm not saying people didn't love each other, but I'm just saying that in order to buy land, acquire land, you had to be, you had to do it through an Indian female, okay? And so that promoted some marriages. And that's why we have a lot of folks that have mixed blood in Oklahoma. That's part of the reason. Okay, so we've got the incest taboos to these things. Now, the last structural thing I want to talk about, and after I get done with this, we'll probably stop this lecture. And that's power. Power. You might think that a discussion of power is inappropriate when talking about family relations, but in reality, if you're married, you'll understand. Power is about getting your way, okay? The ability to achieve your goals even in the face of opposition. And power is an important dimension. Now, I will tell you this. There's this thing called a Pyrrhic victory, where you win the battle and lose the war, and I would warn you guys against that. You may be in a situation where you win the battle, but trust me, you'll lose the war. But let's talk about power. Okay, when we talk about power, we're talking about institutionalized power. Okay, who has the power according to cultural norms? And let me get this up here. And there are different types of power. There is patriarchal. Matriarchal and egalitarian. Oops. Gal. I don't think that's right. Again, E-G-A-L-A-T. Egal. That is not right. Egalitarian. E-G-A-L. Egal. I can't spell it. I cannot spell egalitarian. That's not right. I don't know how to spell egalitarian. Good grief. I've been teaching college for 37 years, and I can't spell egalitarian. Maybe it's an E. Well, I can't. Hang on, I can fix it. Well, I don't want to waste a bunch of time here. Maybe it's E. L-O-T-A-R-I-A. I don't know. That doesn't look right. Nothing looks right anymore. Forget it. Egalitarian. That's not right. Okay. Well, okay. Patriarchal is where power is vested in the hands of a man. Okay. We have a patriarchal tradition in our society. All right. If you go to church, and some churches, not all churches, you go to church, there's a good chance you'll hear a sermon about how the husband should be the head of the household. I know Southern Baptists have been fighting over this wives submit to your husband's business. But it's the idea that the father should be the head of the household. All right. Matriarchal, I think I spelled that right. Matriarchal is when power is vested in the hands of a man in the female lineage. I said that right. Invested in the hands of a man in the female lineage. Okay, the avunculocal, remember that? Where the wife's uncle, they live with the wife's uncle. Well, guess who controls the family? The wife's uncle, right? So the matriarchal system, power is vested in the hands of a man, not a woman. We have no cultural, anthropological, historical evidence of women ever ruling the family system. We just don't have any evidence for it, okay? I know you hear about Wonder Woman and you hear about the Amazon women and all that stuff. Those are myths, okay? We have no evidence. And the question is this, okay? Why would that be? Half of the population is women, okay? Women play incredibly important roles. In fact, women are the focus of family life. Why is it that women are never seen, are never in a position of power? And I think there are a couple of reasons. The most important reason is that women get pregnant. And what you got to realize is that in the old days, a woman's adult life was spent either being pregnant or having young children. Because from the time women started having sex at the time they got married and until they died, which was about the age of menopause or before, they were having kids, okay? And then they had menopause and then they died. Okay, so they're having young children in their deathbeds. We'll talk more about that later. So a woman's power is eroded by having young children. She's caught up with taking care of them. She can't. That's the focus of her life. And I will tell you, studies have shown today that girls, your power will be the lowest in your relationship with your husband when you're pregnant and you've got little kids. That's your lowest level of power. Okay, and then you have the fact that men are bigger, faster, and stronger. Okay, so you have those reasons. Now, egalitarian, it just bothers me that I can't spell that. You know what? Well, it doesn't do any good now. Egalitarian is where husbands and wives are becoming equal. And the thing that's critical for that is women becoming employed. As more women work outside the home, their power goes up. Studies have shown a woman's power is directly correlated with how much money she makes. The more money you make, so girls, if you feel downtrodden in your relationship with your husband, get a job, because they'll become dependent on that in short order, and they won't want you to quit, and it gives you power over them. Okay, so we're seeing an egalitarian system, but it's because we're seeing more women beginning, working. Okay, I think that's it, folks. Let me just look over my notes here real quick. Oh, I could have looked in my notes to see how you spell it. E-G-A-L-I-T-A-R-I-N. It's not E, it's I. Good night, nurse. Okay. Well, what we're gonna do. Okay, this was 16B, and what we're going to do next is we're going to start talking about stages in the family life cycle, and we're going to start talking about mate selection. Okay, and we'll spend some time on that. So I'll see you in a little bit.